Okay, let's talk about the Western Conference for a bit. Given the state of the Warriors, I do think the conference is decently open right now. You still have to be awesome to be considered the best team, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if there's just one specific team in that spot right now, right? And just two things before we get going. Number one, the order in which I name teams doesn't mean anything, it's just when I happen to mention them. The second thing is I didn't really know when to stop, so I just kept on talking about teams. Now, to touch on the Warriors for a bit, not that I'm saying anything too out there, I think everybody knows this at this point, but the losses of Gary Payton II and Otto Porter did not help the rotation on top of Wiseman and his struggles in pick and roll defense and lack of playmaking on offense. He's going to the G League. Steve Kerr said he's going to be there for a decent while. And you've got Clay, who is on a real tough shooting streak. And, when I look at the shots he's attempting, I would say they're mostly normal Clay shots that we saw him make for years. And I guess now it's a little bit of like, well, what is the proper line given that, he's not the same guy? Like, what is that line of aggressive shots and pull-ups in transition and shots where a guy's just flying at him or he's like 2 feet behind the three-point line coming off of some sort of an action, and they just haven't been the same defensively. Some of that was the young guys, some of that was miscommunications I talked about in that one video I did. Not that I'm the only one who's noticed that. And having to watch Steph drop 50 to give them a puncher's chance versus Phoenix, well, yeah, that happened. Now let's talk about the Blazers. I don't want to just repeat everything I said in my way too early MVP video when I mentioned Dame in that one for them here, but I do want to talk about the defense some more. I mean, with Nurkic and Eubanks as their two big guys, it's sometimes a drop, it's sometimes playing at the level of the screen and then dropping and kind of giving, maybe it's Josh Hart or Jeremy Grant or whoever on the ball handler, enough time to kind of stick with him around the screen. And then from there, man, like you got all these athletic wings between Josh Hart and Jeremy Grant, like I said, Nasir Little, Justice Winslow, Shaden Sharp, to where they are kind of aggressively helping off of shooters and hoping they can get back to him, which I do think makes them a little susceptible to giving up threes. But so far, what it's mostly resulted in is ball handlers just getting a little overwhelmed because they're just getting crowded a bit. And the switchability is real with all those athletic wings as well. And the other big development for them, this one more so on offense, is Jeremy Grant, who's been a good two-way guy for him so far. So far, when the ball ends up in his hands for a potential ISO or even something in the post, the percentages have been good enough to justify him taking those shots. And if that holds up, then that's amazing if you're Portland. We'll see as the year goes, but the catch and shoots have been there, and also the times where he will get the ball and then attack off the dribble and make the next thing happen, whether that's a finish for him or a kick to somebody else. Because back in the day when it was Aminu getting a lot of minutes on the wing for the Blazers, it was like, ooh, sometimes the play is just going to die, whereas Jeremy Grant can keep it moving. And all of this around, of course, Dame and Simons and their threats as shooters and how that opens things up for everybody. That's the basic thing. Next, we go to the Clippers, where Kawhi played his first game in a minute last night. And, that is the obvious story right now for them, but it is the biggest one. I mean, if Kawhi's as good to go as we can ask of him at this point, then they're a contender. And if not, they're going to be effectively last year's team, which is going to be great defensively. And offensively, it's going to be a struggle. I mean, they're 30th in offense and they're second in defense. Similar to the Blazers, because of all their wings, the Clippers have a lot of switchability. But unlike the Blazers, I think the Clippers run a bit more of a safe scheme where Zubats will drop a little more than maybe Nurkic will in something, and I think they're not going to play off of shooters as much. They will stay home a little bit more. They pick their spots, don't get me wrong, to swarm on guys and play a little higher up or put two on the ball occasionally, but yeah, for what it's worth, Ty Lue has had an elite defense for a couple years in a row now, even without Kawhi playing. But that's the big thing. I mean, you can credit PG for keeping the offense afloat as much as you want to, but they need Kawhi. Now let's go to the Nuggets. So Denver has a bit of their own lineups thing, similar to the Warriors, where the two lineups that we really, really care about, the starting lineup and then Bruce Brown replacing MPJ with the rest of the starters, both of those lineups are great. You move away from those two, it starts to get rough. So we'll see how Michael Malone wants to mess with that. But besides that, I mean, Bruce Brown has been cooking a little bit more than I kind of thought he'd be. Like, he's been attempting more threes, he's been making things happen off the dribbles. Of course, everybody thought about his cutting and just general screen setting in the Nuggets offense. And okay, yeah, KCP I think has been the perfect fit for them, more so than what Barton was, because they just needed probably a little more athleticism, more shooting, and more defense. So there you go. And as far as, how often Murray and MPJ are making their shots, which are typically of the jump shot variety, playing off of Jokic, Everything they're doing looks normal in terms of the plays they're running and just, something simple like Murray Jokic screen. They step up, the ball ends up in Jokic's hand at the free throw line, then it's a kick to MPJ in the corner. Like, all that looks great. Defensively, their overall defensive rating is not very good. They're in the 20s, but again, similar to the Warriors, starting lineup is good defensively. The Bruce Brown replacing MPJ lineup has been a little worse defensively lately. Overall, has still been good. As for Jokic specifically, I don't know, pick the game. Like against the Pacers, he opened up in a drop, and then as the game went on, they experimented a little bit more with having him play higher up on screens. Against the Bulls, a lot of the time he was at the level of the screen, hoping to get back to, let's say, Vooch, and then in the meantime, you've got Gordon or MPJ helping from the wing to not allow just something easy at the basket. They've just got to be good enough on that side of the floor. Now let's talk about the Suns. CP is done shooting the ball. Now that's not totally true, but it's a little true. He's up to like 7 shots per game right now. But he's still the point guard, and I would expect his efficiency to get back on track. The mid-range has been fine. It's mostly been the 3 that's been the problem for him. Beyond CP, really just with the uncertainty of the vibes going into the season for Phoenix, I think you got to be pretty optimistic here. Within that, you've got things like, Mikal Bridges is doing a little bit more with the ball where maybe it won't necessarily be like an ISO or a pick and roll up top, although you can find more of those possessions scattered around the season for him. But it might even be like he catches the ball in the corner and then he takes 2 dribbles into like a pull-up or a finish at the basket, or more plays where it's not just him being a finisher. Now, it's not as if Bridges never dribbled the ball before the season. Of course he did, but it seems like it's happening a little more often. Booker is handling the ball a little bit more, and least we forget that he got up to, 7 assists a game that one season before they traded for Chris Paul. The DeAndre Ayton thing is still pretty much the DeAndre Ayton thing. I'm sure he wants more shots, and I'm sure he would love to be like, hey, listen, man, you didn't see me on that roll, or you didn't get me the ball on that seal all the time. I just think his place in the offense pretty much is what it is, man. You also had Cam Johnson, who definitely gave them more potential as a gunslinger from outside than Jay Crowder. Unfortunately, he's going to be hurt for a minute here now. And defensively, they became amazing on that side of the floor when they got CP, Bridges, of course, an all-defense guy, DeAndre Ayton. It's been said enough the strides he made on that side of the floor. I really think it's just a matter of them proving that they've got that extra juice in the playoffs, which, might be in the form of Devin Booker handling more ball handling now, Cam Johnson being a little more dangerous from outside than Jay Crowder, Mikal Bridges proving he's got a little bit more as a ball handler. I would also really love to see DeAndre Ayton shooting 6 free throws a game, but I just don't think it's going to happen at this point. And then, of course, they need CP to hold up. Next, we get to the Grizzlies. So, Desmond Bane took another jump, and at this point, he's on pace to being one of the best shooters ever. And the real exciting part about it is it's not just catch and shoots. His 3-point assisted percentage went down this year while his attempts went up, and his percentage went up as well. It's pull-ups off of screens, it's pull-ups in transition. And he's also getting his movement on as well. He's coming across off-ball screens, catching it in stride, turning right to the basket. It's pretty wild, man. You couldn't draw up a better shooter than Desmond Bane unless it's like Steph Curry pretty much right now. He is also getting his cutting on a bit, and also the passing has been better as well. So those actions that sometimes lead to him taking a 3 on a handoff or whatever also sometimes might lead to him making whatever the read's got to be. No, he's not in the list of best passers in the league like he is the best shooters, but it's been good. And coming into the season, when I was doing my finals pick video, I needed a little more confirmation that Desmond Bane could be that number 2 guy. And you know what? He might be the number 2 that you need next to Ja to really go for a title. Now, as far as the Grizzlies overall this season, defensively, I think they lost a bit with losing DeAnthony Melton and Kyle Anderson and having, David Roddy, who's a rookie, play in some of those minutes. Jaren Jackson also just had his first game of the season against the Pelicans recently, so I think that explains the defense. As far as the team overall, Dylan Brooks, I would like him more if he just shot 6 less times per game because, he gets into his contested shots and just general tough shots, attempting things sometimes, and he's just not good enough at those shots to justify doing that, but he does it anyway. Now, I understand what he gives them with the physicality, toughness, and all that. I get it. He should be getting minutes, but yeah. The other thing, though, with Memphis, if Jaren Jackson can just give you that solid 17 points a game off of good 3-point shooting, good diving to the rim, and doing just enough with his post skills and his footwork and spin moves, hook shots, and just where he develops on all those things, how scary could these guys be? Look, let's say they're one move away, whatever that one move is. Maybe it's just a veteran wing who can just do a little bit of everything. And then if Desmond Bane's really this guy, I mean, how long until we're like, okay, Grizzlies finals team? As for Dallas, the Mavericks would love to have a Desmond Bane, but they can't. So the next best thing is for everybody to be making their shots around Luka. And so far, look, Finney Smith, Bullock, Tim Hardaway Jr., Maxi Kleba, these guys just haven't shot as well as you'd like. Overall, I mean, Finney Smith, he popped off from 3 against the Clippers, but this is just kind of what Dallas is. They are a good fundamental defense. Luka's going to be Luka. Dinwiddie is going to chip in as he can as a ball handler. Christian Wood's going to screen for Luka. They're going to get some actions that look good. And besides that, you're hoping the threes drop. I mean, Luka's going to make the right decision coming around the screen, but the ball's got to go in. Also, they lost to the Rockets without Luka, so take that for what you will. I can't ignore the Jazz. I've done a video on them already, of course, but they're 10-6, and the 5-out motion offense, it's going to make them annoying all season. You got Lauri Markkanen moving from the corner to get a head of steam to the basket on top of Mike Conley doing his own version of the point guard, really, and then you got Clarkson and Malik Beasley's reckless shot making. Like, the stuff, it's fun, man. Now, as far as the ceiling on their defense, I don't know. I mean, it's still Markkanen and Olynyk as your front court, we'll see. They have lost 3 in a row. One off the back of Embiid having the best game of his life. What do we got left? I mean, we know the struggles with the Wolves between D'Lo making shots. I mean, I've already done the video where I mentioned, Towns. I think he's being pushed out to the three-point line a little more than you really like him to when he's out there with Gobert. The Anthony Edwards, Gobert, D'Lo, Gobert screens are just a little clunky right now, and it's just a far cry from Towns setting all those screens and a few more of them being from Rudy with Cat spotting up. There's still some things to be optimistic about between when Gobert's in the game. They're very good defensively, and when they run more set actions on offense, at least the last time I did the real deep dive on them, at least, it looked better, right? Where you had like Rudy and Cat screening within the same play, for example, and then, one can cut, one can spot up. Typically Cat doing the spotting up there, as you would imagine. Now let's get to the Pelicans to finish this off. They might be the most confusing team in the league for me so far. They're 5-4 in their last 9 games. In that time frame, they're 13th in offense, 7th in defense. And I'm still confused, partially because CJ is leading the team in shot attempts. Now you can say, yeah, well, Zion and Ingram, especially Zion, get to the line more than CJ does, so therefore it's like kind of shot attempts, even if it's not technically a shot attempt unless it's a 3-point play. Okay, looking at the way the offense looks, I mean, look, you're going to get your Zion in the post, you're going to get Zion bringing the ball up court, and then sometimes defenses are sagging off of him, so he just takes the space, and next thing you know, he's at the basket. Or he could be screening for somebody, which might lead to a dive, or it might lead to him like getting the ball around, let's say, the free throw line or a little above it, and then from there, he's just going to be Zion, a couple dribbles one way, or a spin move, or just go through a guy, basically. Ingram is going to get his moments of pull-ups off of screens, or just isolations, or, his turnaround mid-range occasionally. And my thing with those two and CJ together is kind of like, what is the proper balance of structured offense versus more just let those guys cook offense? Because I'd like to believe there's a world in which, kind of similar to what they did last year, where if you have enough screen actions happening, you can just freak a defense out to where it's Valanciunas or Zion diving to the rim, or it's CJ or Ingram open for some sort of a shot. But at the same time, all these guys are going to have their preferences of, sometimes CJ's just going to want to take a pull-up off of a screen. Same thing with Ingram. And then defensively, they've been a little confusing for me too, where like against the Pacers, they got lit up from 3. Some of it being, there was a few plays where they could have had a more spirited closeout, or a play where, let's say, Zion didn't get around a screen as fast as you'd like, or they brought 2 on the ball, which led to them being in too much rotation, or Halliburton's hitting a pull-up 3 against a Valanciunas drop. But then their last win against the Grizzlies, they were better defensively. Memphis missed a bunch of threes. One play I remember was Valanciunas and Herb Jones kind of doubling Dillon Brooks, and then it's a swing to Jaren Jackson. Ingram had a good closeout on him. It doesn't go in. And I'm like, I don't know. The Pelicans are confusing the hell out of me. Also, shout out to the Kings. Their offense has been amazing lately. I'm looking to do a video on them in a little bit.